5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Why does the Catholic Church make such a big deal out of contraception, out of artificial birth control? That's a question that many people wonder about, including many Catholics. And there are a lot of answers to that question. But the one that I want to focus on today is this. Because the issue of contraception is not just one moral issue among others. It actually lies at the heart of important questions about what it means to be human and what it means to live in the world that God has created. What is the nature of human love, and how do we interact with the world around us and with ourselves? That's what we're going to be discussing today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we dive into today's topic, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, that's ignition@sfcatholic.org. This is one of our occasional solo episodes. Just me, not just me in studio, just me at the table. Because also in studio, behind the scenes, as it were, is Casey. Casey, what do you prefer as your title when it comes to Ignition episodes?
Engineer.
Is that all? Just engineer? All right. Casey is our engineer extraordinaire. I'm gonna add that on for you today. So Casey, why do you think the church makes such a big deal out of artificial birth control?
My answer to that is found in like the natural law, the purpose. What's the purpose of things?
Right.
And if you're not using something according to its purpose, which is found in its nature, in what it is, then it's actually contrary against nature.
Right. Yeah, great. Are you not speaking into a mic there? What?
I actually totally forgot about it.
You totally forgot about. Oh yeah, Casey forgot. I'm using air quotes for you, those who are listening. He forgot that he's supposed to be mic'd up for these solo episodes. So yes. So the one answer why the church teaches what she does about contraception is that contraception contravenes the nature and the purpose of human sexuality, including the marital act, the sexual act, and that's part of the natural law tradition that the church recognizes in the very nature of nature. In the very nature of reality. Things have, by God's design and intention, purposes, and that includes certain actions or acts of the human person. They have purposes. And when we try to subvert that God-given purpose with our own purpose, that's when things don't work out the way they're supposed to work. And we're going against God's law, but we're going against, it's not like that's an external reality. We're going against the purpose for which he has created the thing, in this case, our sexuality and the marital act. And that leads to problems. Whenever you use something in a way that goes against its purpose, bad things start to happen. Sometimes they're small bad things, sometimes they're great bad things. So that's a common explanation from the church's tradition on why the church teaches what she teaches about contraception. But Casey, I want to push you on that. So have you figured out the mic situation yet, Casey? You got. It seems though that because they're all so you give a good answer to the question, why is contraception immoral? But why does the church make such a big deal out of contraception?
I don't know. It subverts our understanding of the human person and our care for life and I'm gonna go back to purpose. I can't get away.
And that's and you're echoing there. That's brilliant, Casey, because that sounds a lot like what I said at the beginning of the show. So of course, it's, so John Paul II really. I don't want to say he focused on contraception. He saw contraception as a significant issue that really lies It's a significant issue because it lies at the intersection of all sorts of very important questions that people have in our time about all sorts of very important things, like the nature of the human person, the nature of human love, how we are to treat ourselves, but also the world around us, the nature of technology and human power over nature. All sorts of really, I think, philosophical questions, but like every important philosophical questions, these questions have ramifications in our day-to-day lives. It's a fact that for many people, when you start to get into more abstract theological or philosophical discussion, many people start to tune out. Like, this is over my head, I don't get it, and I don't see what it matters. And I'm sympathetic to that because oftentimes those sorts of discussions or presentations tend to get jargony. They tend to use language which isn't necessarily familiar to us, and they don't always show the day-to-day consequences of these more abstract questions and the answers to those questions. So I'm sympathetic to it, but still, while I understand why people can tune out and not find them interesting, the fact of the matter remains they are important. So it's sort of like, I don't really care when there's a little earthquake that happens, hundreds of miles out to sea in the bottom of the ocean. I mean, what does that matter to me? Well, it will matter to you if you live on the coast when the tsunami makes landfall. So when it comes to what seems to be abstract, remote, philosophical, theological issues, questions, problems, many times, well, I'd say in every case when it comes to theological topics and philosophical topics probably as well, many times, if not in every instance, there is a real world ramification for those problems, questions, or topics. And that's true with regard to contraception as well. Saint John Paul II, Pope Saint John Paul II, is, at least in certain Catholic circles, well known for devoting considerable time and intellectual and pastoral energy to the topic of contraception because he saw it in the terms that I already referred to. He saw it as lying at the intersection of all sorts of really important questions that people are answering. So he, in the early years of his pontificate, through a series of weekly teachings given at the Wednesday audiences. So Wednesday audiences, it's a time when pilgrims would come to see the Pope. And John Paul II had the habit of using the opportunity to teach on some matter of faith. And in sort of his own twist on those Wednesday audiences, those gatherings with people who came to see the Pope, he developed a specific topic over the course of multiple Wednesday audiences, not just over the course of several weeks or months, but in many cases even years. And the question, not of contraception per se, but prompted by the topic of contraception, he devoted several years of those Wednesday gatherings, those Wednesday audiences, and his teachings at them to the topic of what is now known as the theology of the body. So this wide-ranging, profound teaching on the nature of human love. So John Paul II, again, seeing contraception as this important question, this important moral issue for its own sake, but also for the sake of all sorts of other issues, really wanted to give sustained, focused attention to all the underlying issues. He really wanted to build a really deep and broad foundation to answer the question of contraception, because he saw how it's sort of like the first domino in one of those. If you go on YouTube, and some people, I don't know how many hours people spend setting up these dominoes, but one domino, there's thousands of dominoes, and those things are so fun to watch. That's sort of, I think, how John Paul II saw contraception. Yeah, this moral issue, an important moral issue in its own right, but it has all sorts of other consequences. Once you knock that domino over, there's this chain reaction which ripples out in so many ways, not only the lives of individuals and couples, but also families and ultimately society as a whole. So he wrote what's often called Theology of the Body. His actual title for it was Man and Woman, He Created Them. And if you're listening, I'm holding up a copy of Theology of the Body, quote unquote, Man and Woman, He Created Them. It's a thick book. It's several hundred pages long. The edition that I have has an introductory, I don't know, 100 and some pages, 100 and a half pages by a theologian named Michael Waldstein, or Waldstein, but we'll go with the German pronunciation, Waldstein. But most of the book, the vast majority of the book, is the series of Wednesday audience teachings that John Paul II gave in the early 80s on this topic, not so much of contraception, but the nature of the human person. Just a couple years ago now, so back in, I think, 2020-ish, 21 maybe, Dr. Waldstein came out with a book that's about as thick as the Theology of the Body itself, called, this is not a tongue twister of a title, it's a long title, Glory of the Logos in the Flesh, St. John Paul's Theology of the Body. Again, Glory of the Logos in the Flesh, St. John Paul's Theology of the Body. Again, this is Dr. Michael Maria Waldstein, or Waldstein, is how we might say it in Americanized English. And this is an in-depth treatment of the background to the theology of the body. So if you read TOB and you read Dr. Waldstein's work, you're going to know the ins and outs of theology of the body extremely well. They're not just long reads, but they're dense reads. If this is something that you really feel like you're interested in doing, the Lord's calling you to do one or the other, both, I'd really encourage you to pray, ask for the enlightenment of the Holy Spirit to help you understand what you're reading. Seek the intercession of the author himself, JP2, in the case of the TOB itself, for your own understanding. But I do think it's worth the read. And I want to use just the first couple pages of Dr. Waldstein's own book, Glory of the Logos in Flesh, to explain why this is such an important topic. So my purpose here in this episode is mostly, well, I guess to answer the opening question. Why does the church make such a big deal, so to speak, out of contraception? And again, it's like the first domino. It opens up all sorts of other questions that are really go to the heart of the modern experience. So the way that we live life in our time, sort of the fundamental presuppositions that we have that we never think about, what it means to be human and how we love one another, spousal love, but even friendship. These things are all implicated by the issue of contraception. And we'll see that in Dr. Waldstein, just the first couple pages of Dr. Waldstein's book. Again, this book itself is, before you get to the end notes, 777 pages, 777. What a good number. 777 pages long, from the introduction through the text before you even get to the index and back matter. We're just going to look at the first page and a half of this text. Again, just as a way to maybe reconsider the significance of contraception and why the church gives it the attention that it does. And I love how Dr. Waldstein introduced... Oh, by the way, if you go back in the the ancient archives of Ignition, before Ignition was even called Ignition, one of the first episodes, I think first 10 episodes of this podcast, actually did an interview with Dr. Waldstein about the theology of the body. So would invite you, if you want to hear from the man himself. He's also, if you do a YouTube search for Michael Waldstein, you'll find videos. Just a brilliant man, a humble man, and definitely a man aspiring after holiness, a theologian in the deepest, best sense of the word. He's a layman, he's a husband, he's a father to 7-ish children. And I had the privilege of taking a course with him when I was studying as an undergrad in Austria. He's Australian, not Australian. He's Austrian by birth, but he married an American. And I think he's a naturalized American, or he's a dual citizenship, I think. Teaches now, I believe, at Franciscan University of Steubenville. So his introduction begins with questions. So he wants to start by considering a number of questions around the topic of the theology of the body. So he starts with just a little summary statement of what his book is about. The purpose of this volume is to help readers enter the wonder of St. John Paul's theology of the body. So the purpose of his own thick book is to help us enter the wonder. So I think maybe another way to think about that is to be in awe of the theology of the body, this work of this other brilliant and holy man, a canonized man, John Paul II. To enter into that wonder, one needs to ask questions, sharpen them, and follow through with him. So wonder, when we wonder, that natural, oh wow. When we're in awe of something, we naturally ask questions. So we need to ask those questions, but then we need to sharpen them, and then we need to follow through with them. Questions, Waldstein goes on to say, questions are the lifeblood of reason, the darlings of the intellect. I love that imagery. My darling. I don't know what I have some image of somebody with an English accent. My darlings, probably with cats. I don't know why, but that's like. So questions are the lifeblood of reason, one intriguing metaphor, but questions are also the darlings of the intellect. The intellect loves questions. The intellect is provoked by questions. The intellect wants to answer questions. Okay? So here is the first question. What is the main thesis of TOB, the theology of the body? Waldstein answers it. Responding to the debate about Humani Vitae. So Humani Vitae was the encyclical of Pope St. Paul VI, issued in 1967, 68, I think 68, in which he reiterated the perennial Christian teaching about the immorality of artificial birth control, the immorality of contraception. So back in the late 60s, Paul VI says what Christians have always believed, that it is immoral to use contraception. So from this, there arose this great debate within the church. A lot of theologians, including some priests and even some bishops, were really perplexed by Paul VI's reiteration of the church's perennial teaching, thinking that, in fact, that teaching needed to change. So there was a debate that arose in response to Humani Vitae. So, responding to the debate about Humani Vitae, Theology of the Body, TOB, argues that the human body, in its masculinity and femininity, is an image of the Trinity. So, in our masculinity and our femininity, we are an image. We mirror the Holy Trinity, God Himself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Then quoting from Theology of the Body, and which itself alludes to St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, Waldstein goes on, it has been created to transfer into the visible reality of the world the mystery hidden from eternity in God. So again, that's the human body. The human body has been created to transfer into the visible reality of the world the mystery hidden from eternity in God. In the sacrament of marriage, he goes on, it, again, the human body, it signifies and communicates the union of Christ and the church and the ultimate root of that union, the communion of the divine persons. So, in marriage, the human body signifies, so it's a sign of. What does a sign do? It says something, but it's pointing to something beyond itself. So the human body in the sacrament of marriage, the context of marriage, signifies and communicates. So it points to something beyond us, and it also says, it signifies and communicates the union of Christ and the church. So the depth of the union between the love of Jesus for his church. And the body signifies and communicates the ultimate root of that union between Jesus and the church, which is the communion of the divine persons. So our bodies signify and communicate the communion of the divine persons themselves. One God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then a quote from the Gospel according to St. John. And I, the glory you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one as we are one. That they may be one, they, my disciples, that they may be one, they may be unified, just as we, the Father, the Son, together with the Holy Spirit, just as we are one. That, in other words, that the depth of divine union within the Trinity might be participated in, that we as human beings might participate in that same depth of union as disciples of his, especially in the sacrament of marriage. This thesis is the core of an integral vision of the human person and the conjugal act on which Humani Vitae is based. So this thesis that the human body signifies and communicates the union between Jesus and the church, and in fact the union of the divine persons, that thesis is at the core of a vision of the human person and the marital act, the sexual act, which is the foundation for the church's teaching in artificial contraception as found in Humani Vitae. Again, from the nature of the Trinity, we understand something about the nature of human love, the love between husband and wife in the sacrament of marriage, as seen, including within the sexual or the marital act. And when we understand that foundation, we understand why the church teaches what she does about contraception. And then we get another quote from John Paul II's document, a different document of John Paul II, Familiaris Consortio, on the nature and meaning of the human family. It is precisely by moving from an integral vision of man and of his vocation, not only his natural and earthly, but also his supernatural and eternal vocation, that Paul VI affirmed that the teaching of the Church is founded upon the inseparable connection, willed by God and unable to be broken by man on his own initiative, between the two meanings of the conjugal act, the unitive meaning and the procreative meaning. Okay, so again, I'm going to let that one stand because I want to get to Waldstein's next point. So that's from Familiaris Consortio number 32. You can look that up and ponder it yourself, but I want to get to Waldstein's next question. Why does John Paul see Humani Vitae as important? This is Waldstein's answer. He, JP2, he sees contraception not simply as one among other moral issues, but as a tight knot in which two central questions of our age come together. So again, an intersection of two central questions for our time, where they come together. That contraception is at the heart of that intersection, the heart of that tight knot of these two questions. Those two questions. First, how can man and woman love each other authentically? So what is the nature of authentic human love? And two, what is a reasonable practice of reason in an age of science and technology, shaped by the ambition for the empire of man over things, Francis Bacon, in which we make ourselves masters and possessors of nature, the French philosopher René Descartes? Okay, so that the second question, the first one, okay, how can we love each other authentically? All right, we can get that. The second question, though, needs a little bit of unpacking in the time that we have left. What is a reasonable practice of reason? Okay, so I've talked about this on Ignition before, especially recently in these solo episodes. What does it mean to think well? How do we think well? What is the nature of reason? Is it just calculation, or does it see into the heart of things? I talked about that in another recent episodes. The human intellect has the ability to see into the heart of things, to understand the inner workings, if you will, of nature. By inner workings, I don't mean how the atoms and molecules of nature work. We can do that with our intellects. But even more fundamentally, what is the essence and the purpose of the world around us and of everything that we find in it? The human intellect has the ability to do that. But our age is confused about what human reason is about. We tend to reduce it to calculation and to control of the world around us. But again, the second question. So, what is a reasonable practice of reason in an age of science and technology shaped by a certain ambition? So when we live in an age in which science and technology are at the forefront, as they are, we can see that everywhere. Many people have observed that scientists have sort of become, if you will, the priests of our age. Or science, you often see with a capital S, even when it's not at the start of a paragraph. A scientist, they are the authority figure. Science says, because the science, as some people put it. And that's a whole another complicated issue that we don't have time to unpack for now. But when science and technology, our use of the knowledge of the world around us to exert power on that world, when those are paramount, what's a reasonable practice of reason in an age of science technology shaped by the ambition for the empire of man over things? The empire of man over things. So for us to control the world around us, that comes from Francis Bacon, in which we make ourselves masters and possessors of nature. Again, masters and possessors of nature. As opposed to what? As opposed to recipients of nature, who receive nature from its creator as a gift, and in which we don't possess it or master it, but we discover its beauty, its goodness, and its purpose. So these two questions intersect at the moral topic of contraception. This is why John Paul II saw contraception as such an important topic, as such an important issue. Not just a moral issue, but really a metaphysical issue, an anthropological issue, which speaks again, like the first domino, to all sorts of other realities, other aspects of what it means to be human. This is why he saw this as so important. This is why so many people in the church continue to see this as an important issue. So I would urge you to maybe consider or reconsider your understanding of the church's teaching on contraception, but dive into what it means for understanding of what it means to be human. Until next time, may God bless you.